your host, Damon, and today I have with me, this is a flashback to the past because it's just myself and AF. Buddy, how are you doing this morning? For me, morning. For you, almost evening.
Afternoon, evening. Yeah. No, I'm doing great, man. I was just about thinking about that as well, like a proper throwback to the origins, put it that way, of Comic Corner. And yeah, I'm happy to be here, man. We got an amazing show, and I can't wait to get into all of it.
It's funny you bring that up because I've started been doing like legacy numbers on our episode counts, if you noticed on our
Yeah.
thumbnails, like the comic corner box origin of it all.
Yeah.
And we're on episode 30 of us doing like these, started bi-weekly and then we started doing weekly. So we're now 30, 30 episodes of reviews, which is pretty cool.
Amazing.
Pretty cool.
Amazing.
We're getting up there. We're getting up there. Here's what we have today. Here's our rundown. We have a pretty light week this week, which is very nice. So we'll get through this nice and slim. A new Avengers have assembled from Steve Orlando. Of course I read this. You know why? Because Clint Barton's on the team. So of course I'm going to read it. And I'll chat all about that. Red Before Black returns from Stephanie Phillips. I really enjoyed the first issue from Boom Studios. We'll talk about the second issue. And absolute tie-in. We're going to go back to a Green Arrow issue that came out just a few weeks ago because Absolute Power has been ramping up. The more people I talk to about it, the more people seem to enjoy it, which is pretty cool to have people really enjoy an event, and not just an event, a DC event that seems to be leading into something much bigger. We have all these Absolute books just coming in on the horizon, which is very exciting. And before we get started, keep an eye out for those Absolute books because we have an interview coming up very soon with a writer of one of those Absolute books. So keep an eye out if you will. But first, before we get into all that, we have the news. Oh, we have the news, and this dropped literally within the hour of me like setting up for the show. We have a new trailer for Venom 3. We don't usually talk about the movie stuff because that's not what we do. That's really what the Agents of Fandom podcast does here on the main channel and on the podcast feed. However, we got a first appearance of a little character that I was kind of anticipating to be in this movie, and at the same time, I was hoping wasn't going to be in this movie because it's a character I enjoy, and it's an event book that I really enjoy, and more or less because of the visuals of it all. We are talking about Knull, the King in Black. We got a first glimpse at Knull in this trailer. As you see, if you're on our YouTube page, you get a nice little glimpse of that for our video regulars, which is very nice. You get a little positive spin there. However, here's what I want to talk about. Like, let's just do this first. We haven't done one of these in a while. Who is Knull? It's pretty simple. Knull is the king of the symbiotes. He came in he was co-created by Donny Cates and Ryan Stegman. And during King Black, he came in and tried to take over Earth. It's pretty straightforward stuff right there. But one of the really cool things about the King in Black book is that we got venomized versions of all these characters, like a venomized Thing, a venomized Cyclops, venomized Daredevil, which was really cool. And I believe we even got like glimpses of like a venomized Ms. Marvel as well. Like very cool visuals. In this trailer, however, and because of the rights of it all, we're doing King in Black without the cool bits. So instead of getting venomized, insert cool character here, we're getting Venom Horse. We're getting Venom Fish. Frustrating.
Oh,
Frustrating.
Sony.
Oh, Sony.
Oh,
It's
Sony.
frustrating. So, those are my general thoughts about that. But hey, if you want to learn more about Knull, he's a really cool character, got glimpses of like a Knull figure in the most recent Spider-Man game as well, with Venom being a huge part of that. But something I wanted to bring up, one of the reasons why I was tying this all back to the comic space of it all, is that Ryan Stegman, the co-creator of Knull, tweeted out that he had no idea that Knull was in this movie. Which it's like, this isn't the first time this has happened. And it's becoming more and more frustrating. Even just like people within the comic book community, as fans, and I can imagine the creators as well. Because yes, these are characters who are IP of the company. company has full rights to do whatever they want with these characters, technically without going to the creators of them. However, there should just always be some sort of like common courtesy, a reaching out, being like, hey, we're going to be using this character you created. Would you like to give us any insights on this? We saw this at the very least. Matt Fraction in the Hawkeye show was there. Like, he oversaw, executive produce, he gave his insight on that show in some regard because it was heavily influenced by his run from Hawkeye with Marvel. It's very frustrating that like these creators, and I honestly I have no idea. He even joked tweeting, he's like, hey, I expect to have a nice pool moat around my house after this movie, which we all know probably isn't happening because the creators rarely get anything out of these big films. But AF, this isn't new, you know? Like this isn't anything new to any of this.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say that because I mean something very similar happened with the Marvel Snap game with Chen Bartel and the Emperor Hulkling card that was used within the game, and you can find out a little bit more about that instance on the Agents of Fandom website, written by our very own agent Adam Levins. But yeah, I mean, just improve collaboration. I mean, we have Marvel creating all of these different divisions: television, animation,
Mm-hmm.
comics, Marvel Studios. They're creating silos when they should just be encouraging collaboration, respecting the creators, the source material of why these characters are possible, why these movies are possible, why these games are possible. And without these comic creators, without these amazing geniuses who basically just gave life to all of these characters that we love, we'd have nothing.
Mm.
So respect them and just encourage the collaboration. That's all that I have to say on it.
Collaboration is the key word, and I think that's the best word to use. You know, you just go to a creator, hey, we're going to be using this character. Do you have any insights on how we should use this character? Or we're going to be using this character in this way. Would that fit within, like, you know, your ideas of the character? And whether they move forward with those ideas or not, there is at least some sort of mutual respect there. And it feels like, because I do completely understand like how separated the barriers are between all of these divisions, right? I totally understand that, and that's obviously a factor here. It is just frustrating just from the outside looking in, as
Yeah.
like a comic fan ourselves, when you see a co-creator of a character and then they're watching the trailer the same time you are and they're like, whoa, my character's in this, and they're just kind of like, what do you mean you didn't know? You just expect that for as an outside looking in point of view. But there you go. Venom 3. I'm sure Agents of Fandom podcast will talk more about this as a whole. You can keep out for more news, insights, and everything on the social channels as well. On Twitter at Agents Fandom and at Agents of Fandom everywhere else. But let's go into what we're here for. And this is what we do. We do our comic reviews, our 30th episode, where we have been doing reviews on either a bi weekly or a weekly. Been weekly for a while. We've been keeping that up. And even though we had like a really tough patch to go through in the summer with some scheduling, we managed to find a way through it, and I'm very, very proud of that. Onwards to Avengers Assemble. Steve Orlando's Avengers Assemble. This is a very, 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 very I don't even want to say dense. There's a lot of characters in this book. There's a lot of characters on this Avengers team, and this cover right here doesn't even show all of them because there's more. And this is a fun book. I call this a popcorn book. We've talked about popcorn books here on this channel for a while. There's cheesy dialogue. The story is just pretty like, yeah, this is fun, but it's just more about the goofiness of it all. It's a little bit nostalgic. Something in here I really enjoyed. I'll say this. It kind of follows two stories, right? So Cap, Monica, Shang-Chi, and Wasp are out dealing with a big issue, like a big, 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 almost god tier level issue. Meanwhile, the rest of these new Avengers are literally assembling at Avengers Mansion. And they're like, "Hey, where's Cap and all of them?" I'm like, "Ah, they're dealing with something, but we'll wait for them when we get back because it's Cap and Monica and Shang Chi and Wasp. They got this." So the part I really enjoyed the most about this is all these other Avengers assembling at the mansion because then it's like, "Oh, they're in the book. They're here. You're here." One of the Power Pack kids is in this. There's like some wild pulls in this. Wonder Man's here, Hercules is here, and those aren't even like the wildest pulls onto this team. And naturally, of course, like I mentioned earlier, hey, Clint Barton's on this team. I'm gonna read this book, and Steve Orlando writes Clint pretty well. He does it in the classic. He's goofy. He's, a little bit head in the clouds. Very fun callback to the Sky motorbike. How Clint's like talking to Jarvis and he's like, "Hey Jarvis, can you go get my bike so I can take it out for a whirl?" I'm like, "Yes, I need to see that in the series, please." Give me a callback. And also, one last thing on this. When was the last time AF you read a Marvel book and had a full-on thought bubble in it?
Oh, that's interesting.
Right? Full on thought bubble. We get inside Clint Barton's head for a little bit, and I'm like, man, that is nostalgic right there. That is crazy that a thought bubble these days is nostalgic because we just don't get that anymore.
Yeah. Um, just a quick one. Like you mentioned that there are tons of characters in this book, right? A few weeks ago on the show, we mentioned, I think it was NYX that we were talking about, and we mentioned how there were so many characters in there, and how because it's a limited run that not everybody really has their time to shine.
Yes.
Um, is this a limited run? Is it an ongoing? And
As of right now,
how
it's
are
a
they
limited
dealing with that?
series. Yeah,
Okay.
as of right now, this is a limited series. So I will say, Steve so far has done a very good job of giving everyone like their moment to shine, right? Everyone kind of has like their moment. Now it's hard for everyone to have a moment when half of this book is dealing with them just kind of sitting at a table in Avengers Mansion playing poker with each other, right?
Yeah.
But it's a good introduction of like the little personalities of everyone, especially some of the less known characters, let's say, because Steve brought in a good chunk of them, and I'm not spoiling all of them because there's like some wild pulls, especially at the very end. I'm like, good gravy. We dug for this one. This is interesting. So it's cool. It's fun. It's a popcorn book, right? Like there's some very cheesy dialogue in here, especially with like the main villain of this first issue. You literally get like a no as they wither away type of thing. Like it's very cheesy. But that's comics, right? Comics don't always have to be the ultimate level of like high quality. And I do love and I really like those are my books that I read every month, are like my high quality books. But these are also comics, you know?
Yeah.
Sometimes I want my popcorn book.
1 second. I'm just adding this to my pull list right now. You
Okay.
said it's a limited run, so
Yep.
I'm just adding that.
Yep. Steve Orlando writer, Corey Smith penciler, Elizabeta D'Amico and Oren Jr. inking, Sonia Oback colorist, and Corey Pettit letterer. Corey Pettit. If you're just looking for a letterer, he's on like almost everything Marvel. So there you go. Avengers Assemble. It's a good time. It's not like the greatest book ever, but if you're looking for a popcorn book, if you're just looking for a fun series, and who knows, I'm hoping that we get like this line of Avengers moving forward because we do have like Jed McKay's Avengers book, but this one, I know we have a West Coast Avengers book coming, right? I know we have a West Coast Avengers book coming. This team is way more West Coast Avengers than that actual announced team. This. If you call this West Coast Avengers or whatever, like that's what this is giving. It really is. From like the over the top stories to the big villain reveal at the very end of the last page. We're like, oh man, this is West Coast. This is like 70s, 80s West Coast ideas. So if you're looking for that, and that's what this team is, it really is. So there you go. Avengers Assemble. Steve Orlando's
West
Avengers
Coast
Assemble.
Avengers Assemble.
Although they're in Manhattan. Maybe West Side of Manhattan. No, they're definitely in Central Park. I don't know what I'm saying. Moving on to Boom Studios. Stephanie Phillips, Goran Sudzaka, Red Before Black, number 2. I really enjoyed this first issue. So I was looking forward to seeing what the second issue had to bring. And I thought it was very well done. Because the first issue, it, like a lot of books these days, it drops you into a world, you're figuring things out as you go. But sometimes what we get in the second issue, we don't usually get until like maybe issue 4 or 5. Like you get it towards the end and you're like exploring more of a character's backstory. We're getting that straight in issue 2. We're getting more of like some characters' backstories and more about like this jungle world that seems to be unraveling. And it's like, what's going on here? What is this psyche jungle world? It's cool. It's great art. I really enjoyed this. Good mystery unfurling, and I really like the layers that Stephanie Phillips has like brought into the story. It's tense, but in a fun way.
I'm enjoying a lot of like Stephanie Phillips literature lately. So when I get a moment for this one, I'll probably just read them all in one go. But yeah, I haven't caught up with any of them up until now. Yeah,
I do know this has been teased, like the slogan, the catchphrase for this whole thing, the slogan for it has been like the most chaotic duo since like Harley and Ivy. We haven't seen these two really become a
nice.
duo yet. Like these two are still kind of like at heads with each other. So obviously there's significantly more to the story that we have not gotten to yet. But that just keeps me that just is like getting me more excited. And there's like a really cool level of someone who was in jail. They're taken out of jail by like local officials to be like, you're helping us to get like your buddy who is like working for something that we're trying to get more into, essentially. It's good. So far, it's solid. It's, if you're looking for that kind of story, if you like that stuff, you'll really
How's
enjoy
the
it.
art?
Art's great. Art's great. It's perfect for the setting. It really is.
Nice.
Colors too. I like the muted colors. It's a little bit washed. It's not vibrant because when we do get into like a jungle setting, which we haven't like really like explained what this is yet, the jungle selling the setting, the greens, the blues, like everything in there just pop because everything else is so muted, so washed that when you get to that, colors really pop. So it's really well done in that regard.
Cool.
It's really good. I enjoy it. I really do enjoy it. Also from Boom Studios, a book we have been enjoying is Profane, number 4. Peter Milligan, Raul Fernandez. This is a book that, it was funny, at the end of the last podcast we had, the last episode we had, TJ and I, we were giving our theories for this. And you know, sometimes when you have a theory and then you get so attached to that theory that when that theory doesn't happen, you're like, darn.
I
We
know
got
the
a little
feels.
bit of that. We got a little bit of that. So TJ and I were like, we were speculating because there was like this big mystery unfolding. And if you haven't been following this book with us, this is essentially the story of a fictional character in a detective novel gets brought into the real world because his writer is dead. And it turns out he's not the only character from fiction that is in the non-fiction world. There's other characters running around, and their writers also have died recently or just been murdered. So it's like there's this crazy thing going on. And TJ and I had like this idea. It's like, what if all of this in the end, and who knows, maybe this still is the case because this isn't the final issue. What if all of this in the end is this isn't the non-fiction, this is the fan fiction? Especially because there's this character in here who is literally a super fan. And
Yeah.
TJ and I have been pretty sus of him. Not gonna lie. He's been pretty suspicious throughout this
Yeah.
entire series that since we've been introduced to him. In the end, there's a little bit it doesn't go that route, right? It doesn't. It
Well, we
goes
don't know
into
yet.
so far it hasn't.
Yeah.
So far as essentially these characters their writers have died, and the twist in this, and I asked TJ, like, what do you think the twist? He's like, he thought the twist wasn't as good as we were hoping for because we were kind of like married to this idea. It was like, oh, it's gonna be this, and then when the twist is essentially these characters are looking for a writer to finish their story, So they're going to like the newer writers to finish the story in a fresher way. It's like, oh, okay. It wasn't like the big, like, huge twist. So far, again, like we've mentioned, this isn't the last issue. For all we know, at the very end, it could all been fan fiction all along.
So yeah, the moment I think his name was Egbert, the super fan.
I would.
Um, yeah, he's sort of like a sidekick, super fan, fan crazy, uh, stalker in some parts as well because he
He's very
just
committed.
wants. Yeah, he's very committed, and yeah, like the moment he first showed up, I had some reservations about him as the pages went on. Uh, I just really just started like thinking of him as really sus, as you said earlier, and just the moment when okay, am I allowed to speak about spoilers for this
Oh,
one?
yeah, go for it.
Okay. Yeah. So when he's chilling in that hospital bed and he's basically blaming Will for not being there, basically telling him that in the novels you always show up when uh, the victim is in trouble, or you always show up in time. And like I had two feelings in that moment. The one feeling is that yes, like the writer's trying to tell the reader as well, not everything that you see in movies or that you read in comics or is true. So don't do stupid shit like that. But also another thing is just like, why would you like? He's a super fan, so he knows that it's fiction. Nothing's going to happen like that in the real world. Just because a fiction character comes into the real world doesn't mean that all of that comes with him. So when he's telling him that, like, is he trying to make Will feel bad? Is he trying to? I
Yeah,
I
a
don't
little
know.
bit.
Like, it's,
A little bit. And I'll butt in here and say this is reminding me a little bit of a thread that's gone viral a little bit on Twitter within the comic book community about, like, there's like the three different types of like superhero fans, and there's one in
yeah,
particular that is just very committed to a character to an
yeah,
extreme. And it gets to a point where that blending between fiction and reality, there isn't a barrier anymore,
yeah,
right? It's an over attachment, it's an expectation, and you no longer realize or can comprehend that what happens in the fictional world doesn't happen in reality, right? Like,
yeah.
you're just living so much in the world of make believe by being so attached to a character that you completely lose all sense of reality. And I feel like there's a little bit of that in that moment right there.
Yeah, it was very meta, if you can put it that way.
But overall, I enjoy the art style of this book.
Yeah,
It works perfectly for the story. I going all the way back to the first issue, the lettering I still giggle at because it is written literally like in that Times New Roman typeface, like as if it was being typed out onto a page. And
yeah,
that was like the big reveal at the end of the first issue. And I was like, oh, okay, I see where this is going now. But ever since, it's been pretty cool to see how this has all come about. I am interested to see where this is going in the end. If there is one more big twist, or
yeah.
that twist that we got in this issue with these characters want this newer writer to finish their stories, if that's a twist, or like I said, there's one more. Because for me, I'd really hope and want for one more, especially if this is the story of like a detective comic book, a detective novel, because every good detective story always, like, there's not just one twist. There's not
Yeah.
just two twists. There's like three or four, and then there's like the big one at the end that's like you almost have the dagger and you twist it one more time, you know?
Yeah, that's what I'm hoping for the final issue. I'm just hoping that by the last 5 pages we think that we figured it out, and then in those last 5 pages they just the curviest of curveballs. I want that. I'm setting myself up for it.
Okay. All right. So we'll keep an eye out for issue number 5. That's Profane number 4. We've been enjoying it. We hope that the fifth issue lives up to our expectations. We're going to go to DC. We're going to go to the Absolute Power World with a tie-in. Green Arrow. This was a book that when you've been telling me to read, and I'm still kicking rocks for some reason. I don't know why, I just am. Maybe it's because I just read so much and I need something to pass the time. And this is a book that you told me as it was going on that this is going to be a major player in when all this Waller stuff comes to a head. This book
Yeah.
is going to be a major player. Has this continued that?
So it continues until, like, for me, this issue is pretty much filler,
Okay.
and that's why I don't like so many of these titles, and that's not just for Absolute Power, just like events in general. The moment a book ties into an event, it's basically like that the arc that the book was running with up until that point has to change direction to try and service the event. And I feel like that's exactly what Green Arrow number 15 does. Not much happens in this book. For the most part, they are chilling on this aeroplane after they try to get Professor Ivo to help with the Mazos, because as we know in Task Force 7, the Mazos are just running rampant in absolute power. The Mazos are running rampant and under Amanda Waller's order. So they're trying to get to Professor Ivo to try and undo this, to try to find the off switch. And yeah, it's literally just a filler episode. Um, there's something that Oliver Queen is trying to get that him and Martian Manhunter discussed previously. But yeah, other than that, I think Josh Williamson, he does the best that he can with what he was given because of this run, because of the event. Noel Penn's art is amazing as always. Um, but yeah, I don't think I can really speak more about what it is, because it's basically just a tie-in. That's exactly what it is. It's servicing the bigger story.
Yep. Writer Joshua Williamson, artist M.I.K. Newellpan, colorist Romelu Fajardo Jr., and letterer Troy Pateri. As you mentioned, and I've brought this up with like the Wonder Woman run, even with Tom King, I've been loving that
Yeah,
Wonder Woman run so much. How this event has just like put an absolute like damn on the story that it was telling to serve the greater event, which is
yeah,
fine. Like it's totally fine. But if you're reading this run, like if you've been reading Green Arrow, or for me, if I've been reading Wonder Woman, it does put a big stop in that story and almost like janks you in a direction that you weren't expecting to go, and you're like, whoa, okay,
yeah,
there's a big change from everything, which I'm a little surprised at, very least with Green Arrow in particular, because it was so tied into like the whole Waller story in general. I would have
yeah,
imagined that this would have changed course, or at least tied in with that absolute power story better than Wonder Woman, which was very much telling its own thing, or even Batman to an extent, because they at least had the failsafe art. But like Green Arrow specifically with Waller, I'm surprised about that actually.
yeah. No, me too. But I'm not as surprised as you might be, because um, it's just like I feel like like it's Superman, Wonder Woman, Batman, Green Arrow, Green Lantern. Those are all tie-in books, and I feel like because Oliver Queen is in the Absolute Power main series as well, they probably just wanted to give some airtime to the rest of the Arrow team, and they didn't know, or maybe they weren't really open to fleshing their stories out completely without deviating from the main event. So I think because Oliver Queen is in that main run, it's okay to have a sort of a filler episode of the Green Arrow series, just basically bringing the Arrow team to the spotlight instead.
All right. So that's Green Arrow number 15. Have you still been have you been keeping up with, you have been keeping up with Absolute Power, but you've been
Yeah,
enjoying Absolute Power in this event though,
yeah,
correct?
yeah. I'm
Yeah.
I'm enjoying it. Yeah,
From DC to Marvel, our second Marvel book, and this is our last book of the week. Like we said, slim week. Slim week. this the
Yep.
Ghost Spider Gwen, the Ghost Spider. Man, the in there makes me like, oh, like where am I reading this? Spider Gwen, the Ghost Spider #4. So issue #5 here in the States has already dropped. That dropped this week. As we mentioned before, AF gets his books a few weeks later because of where he is. So this is issue 4. Tell me what happens in this issue. So if anyone who is picking up this issue this week, they're all caught up.
Yeah, no, I'm really enjoying the series that I mentioned earlier. Stephanie Phillips, I think her writing style is amazing, and I'm just a huge fan of her comic books. And I think she does an amazing job with Gwen Stacy and all of the multiversal problems that are going with her in this run. Um, this issue, however, I think it was more just like I mentioned with Green Arrow, more like for continuity purposes rather than the storyline, the overarching storyline. There's a lot of things with the Spider people, so that's Spider Man and Silk and Miles and the rest of the gang. They are basically just telling it to lay low, and I mean that's not Gwen Stacy's nature. She doesn't do stuff like that. Um, there's there's I mentioned after the first review that I want to see a lot more of Gwen and Silk, and we get that in this issue. Silk is a really bad cook, so she makes extremely burnt pancakes, and Gwen's extremely hungry. So that's a nice, funny little interaction over there. But yeah, I enjoyed this issue. I can't wait to see where it goes next. There's a lot of overarching questions that I still feel need to be answered with the chameleon. And I think in this issue, he turned into Scorpion, but he is struggling to control his powers. And there's this bright blue light that is coming out of his eyes and coming out of his ears, and nobody really knows what's happening. So, yeah, it's I'm I'm locked in, and I can't wait to see what happens next. And it's fun. It's a fun book to read. I'm having a good time.
A shout out Mark Brooks on this cover. This thing is wild. That is a wild, wild cover. Almost reminds me, and mean this in the most complimentary way possible, of the Alex Ross cover of Mr. Fantastic when he has the
Yeah,
vampires biting on his skin and it's all stretchy and stuff. So shout out Mark Brooks. As we mentioned before, Stephanie Phillips writing, Paolo Villanelli artist, Matt Miller colorist, and Ariana Mayer the letterer. So no OB in this issue?
no Obi in this issue.
Ah,
I really think he's just going to like turn up sporadically.
okay.
Um, every 5 issues, every 4 issues, whatever it is. And I like that he's not in every issue. I feel like this gives Gwen Stacy the spotlight that she needs, and I mean, like having interactions with other Spider people every issues. That's cool. That's cool to me as well.
Absolutely. I'm a big fan of Cindy Moon, of Silk. I have some Silk figurines and pops over back there, if you could even see them. Big fan of Silk, so that's cool that she showed up in the Spider-Gwen issue. Like, really, really in on that. I want to see more of these spider characters, just like interacting with each other, because that's
Yeah.
something I miss. And it's something that I've always get on my little soapbox board and be like, bring back the Marvel anthologies, make amazing fantasy like the Spider title, or you could call it Web of Spider-Man, or we can call it a Spider Society book, whatever. Just give me like a Spider anthology book. I think that would
Yep.
be really cool, and it would allow stories like Cindy's to continue if we only have like maybe like an issue or just like a couple issues worth of stories, just like throw in there to keep their stories going. I'm all in for those. But yeah, there we go. We had a pretty quick week. Nice,
Yeah.
slim, quick, concise. Now, AF, I always ask TJ this. He's never ready for it, which is always makes me laugh. What do you have going on for next week or the next couple weeks that you're keeping an eye on for books?
Yeah. So I'm just gonna go off the bat of where I finished off right now, and um, I think my comic book store has brought it down to 2 weeks now. So I get new comic books every 2 weeks, which is
Nice.
amazing. I don't know if the manufacturers or distributors are watching this show to know that media in South Africa needs needs regular updates. But thank you if you guys are.
Keep
So
it
yeah,
up. Keep it up.
Gwen Stacy, the Ghost Spider. I want more of that. Um, Absolute Power #3. I'll probably be reading that in the next week as well. You guys covered that on the last episode. And yeah, more Superman as well. I can't wait to see more of this whole Clark Satana sort of uh, relationship going on with them going down the dark roads and finding what's next.
Big week for myself for next week. We brought this up previously. It's been delayed, but this is the official, should be the official week this is coming out. Lilith #1 from Vault Comics. We've reviewed that. We'll talk about it again next week when it comes out. I really enjoyed it. Make sure you put it on your pull list and tell your comic shops to go get it because it is an excellent, excellent book. Sticking on that theme, Epitaphs from the Abyss #3 from Oni and from Distillery. I'm going to pick up a Distillery book next week if I can get my little hands on it because those books are very large, like magazine style. The Missionary #1, which is very horror adult, as they were saying. Ryan
Hmm.
Stegman apparently just let loose on this thing. So I'm very curious to see how let loose they let Ryan go. Of course, Paranoid Gardens #3 from Mr. Gerard Way and Sean Simon and Chris Weston. We've interviewed Chris Weston here on the show and talked about that book. It is a very cool book if you're looking for something very different. Prisoner vibes. Definitely check that out. Of course, Superman #18 and X-Men, Ultimate X-Men #7. Been digging that Ultimate line. Everything in the Ultimate line has been utterly fantastic. So those are our suggestions for next week. Let us know what you're picking up.
Are you going to be picking up the Avengers Annual as well?
Maybe. I have a big
I
week
think
next
I
week,
think
so
that's
maybe I may
dropping
have to
next week as
cut
well.
that one off.
Yeah.
I may have to cut
Cool.
that one off. Yeah, it's been comics are comicking, man. Comics are comicking. But that'll do it for this week's episode of the Comic Corner. Make sure you like, subscribe here on the Agents of Fandom channel. Follow us on Twitter at Agents Fandom and at Agents of Fandom on Instagram and everywhere else. That'll do it for this issue of the Comic Corner. Make sure you go read some comics, go support your local comic shops, and until next time.